What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and we are here for Week 6, coming off an elite Week 5 where we saw Penn State, Oregon go to OT, ton of games down to the wire, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi State, LSU, Ole Miss. So hopefully we can replicate some of that excitement. It was a profitable Week 5 for us, but we turned the page. So if you like this content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like. Those things help us a lot. Leave a comment if you want to hear about a specific game later in the week. This is only one of 4 or 5 shows we do. So if you want to hear something, leave it in the comments. The earlier, the better. It's basically a show, same as this, different games, greasier games, G5 games, but all requests. Last thing, if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's dive in. A couple games in the SEC up top. Texas takes on Florida. They hit the road. Both teams off of a bye. Current spread is 6.5 in favor of Texas. Total in the game is 42. Couple points here on the line. The under's taking a little money. Florida's taking a little money. They're a good team. They've just wildly underperformed, and they already lost one of their winnable games on paper, at least, to USF, who is a very good G5 team. 18-16. There was a bunch of nonsense in that game, but Florida still ended up with a 46% post-game win expectancy. It was the right outcome. They also lose to LSU by 10 points. I'm surprised that wasn't worse. That was the 5 turnover game for DJ Lagway. But honestly, their defense has stood tall for the most part. They only allowed 10 points to LSU's offense off the turnovers. Part of the reason LSU got to 20 points was the Lagway pick 6. It was an overall very ugly offensive game for both sides. And last time out, they lose to Miami 26-7. They were injured heading into the game. It got worse. More injuries occurred. And their defense played pretty well in this game too. 4.7 yards per play allowed to Miami. The problem was Florida was at 2.7 themselves. And it wasn't the interceptions this time. The drives were stalled largely because Lagway took some sacks, 5 of them. His receivers dropped 3 passes that ended up being 20% of the catchable targets. It was a punt fest. Florida punted 6 times in the first half. They kind of just messed up overall. Complete offensive disaster for this team so far. When you look at Texas, they lose to Ohio State in week 1. That's really the only data point we have because they've played 3 nonsense games since then. They should have won that game. 82% post-game win expectancy. In a tight defensive battle, it comes down to turnovers in that contest, and Texas had the only turnover. So moving forward, what to expect here? Injuries, Florida has a lot of them, just going position by position. The defensive line is the worst. Caleb Banks, LJ McCray, Mekhi Boireau, Brendan Bett, and George Gums. Maybe Gums returns, but I don't know. Defensive back, they lost Aaron Gates and Dejon Johnson in their last game. 2 in-game injuries, not sure if they play. J. Michael Sturdivant took a big hit, maybe a concussion for him, so very injured. Texas, I think the biggest risk is Emmett Mosley, who hasn't played yet this year at receiver. It's just they've had a lot of guys sitting out, but that's exactly it. They've played nobody, so they've been fortunate enough to sit guys out in these games that are just complete wastes of our time. So moving forward, we mentioned all the injuries with Florida. Can Arch Manning take advantage of that? Because he hasn't necessarily looked great. And when you're playing UTEP and San Jose State and Sam Houston, I don't know about you, but I think the Florida backup defenders are still probably better than those guys. So we'll see. But Arch Manning is at a 63% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per attempt, 8 big-time throws, 6 turnover-worthy plays, which is my big concern. He's not taking care of the ball, and he's not been accurate. 123 rush yards is solid. He is mobile, but it's just not the game we thought we were going to see from the Heisman favorite to begin the year. Now, he is at least getting some skill position players back. The run game should be better with Wisner and Baxter back in the fold. The receiving room is solid even with Mosley gone. We'll see if he returns here. But Livingstone, the replacement, leads the team in receiving. Wingo's at 190 yards as well. It's basically just DeAndre Moore, who hasn't lived up to expectation. Tight end Jack Andres has been okay. But overall, this was maybe a top 10 skill position group coming into the year. I'm not going to write them off that quickly. So Arch, just put the ball in your receivers' hands. I wish they'd run their offense a little more like Oregon, which, prior to last week where Dante Moore was an absolute wizard, that offense typically isn't asking their quarterback to do that much. It's more of an offense, go to your easy read, your first read, get the ball in your 5-stars' hands and let them work. I wish Texas would do a little more of that rather than putting so much on the shoulders of Arch, who hasn't been able to live up to it so far. But the O-line has actually been a pretty decent unit. They've only faced one real pass rush, but it was an okay outing against Ohio State. 13 pressures and 31 dropbacks. That's not anything egregious. So Arch wasn't under duress all that often. And since then, 2 decent G5 pass rushes in San Jose and UTEP, but it's still nothing like Ohio State. I've been pretty impressed with this offensive line. And now they're facing the banged-up Florida defensive line. So even some of their issues, like Brandon Baker, Connor Stroh, and Cole Husson, have been up and down, mainly in the tough games. That's when they've been more down. But, Texas was replacing 4 starters, so the lapses are to be expected. I think they actually, as much as I dislike the easy games, the cupcake games, and having 3 of them, like just do 1 or something, having those 30 games is important for a unit like this that's breaking in so many new starters. But we mentioned it. Can Florida do anything against this offense? The defense has been very good, but at some point, I'm just betting against these injuries, man. They're still 15th in run defense. The pass rush is 104th. I mean, the defensive line at this point is basically just Cameron James and Tyreek Sapp on an island. We're talking third-string interior players. Watch the injury report, of course, but I'm not expecting some of these guys back for a while. So with Wisner back, Baxter back, at some point you think the run game just breaks. And we've seen it in glimpses with Florida so far. I think this could be the spot where it really becomes a problem. And then the pass coverage, they're 56th, 8.3 yards per attempt to Garrett Nussmeier. They did a good job against Carson Beck. I've actually been very impressed with Cormani McLean. He's lived up to expectations. Bryce Thornton's been good. Devin Moore's been good. But again, they have 2 defensive back injuries in game from week 4. Now, they had the bye, but we don't know if these players are going to be out there. Ultimately, I think Texas can move the ball in this Florida defense. It's just very banged up. Conversely, can Florida move the ball? The problem with Lagway has really been the turnover-worthy plays. He has 7 of them, and 6 of them have been converted into interceptions. Most of that coming in one game against LSU, but it's just not been pretty. 67.5% completion percentage, only 5.7 yards per attempt. It hasn't been all his fault. The O-line hasn't been great. He's taken 11 sacks. The pressure rate is 32%. That's pretty high. But his pressure-to-sack ratio is also poor. It's at 24.5%. His receivers have dropped a fair amount of passes. And they've had to rely on freshman Vernal Brown. He leads the team in receiving. It's because Eugene Wilson's been a ghost coming off the season-ending knee injury. They haven't had Dallas Wilson yet. J. Michael Sturdivant has been really just a rotational player, a role player his whole career. You can't ask that guy to come in and have 100-yard receiving games. And the run game, they need to commit more to Jaden Bott. Every time Jacoby Jackson's in there, it's kind of been a mess. So the skill players haven't helped a lot. The offensive line is 69th in pass blocking, 16th in run blocking. Now, there is room for improvement. They have faced 3 top 50 pass rushes, and maybe they face the top edge rushing group in the country with Miami coming to town. But LSU's been pretty good. They weren't far behind. You look at those 2 games, 19 pressures allowed to Miami, 14 to LSU. We thought this O-line was going to be good coming into the year, and they've been, I think, compared to expectation, they've been above average. But they're still rotating guys on their right side. Damian George and Caden Jones. Jones especially is underperformed. But, I mean, they're just rotating guys. And the rest of the group, I think, is good. I like Austin Barber, Jake Slaughter. Harris is good, too. But you can't be rotating 2 positions on your offensive line this deep into the year. So can the Texas defense take advantage of this? Well, they're a top 10 defense. What did they do in their most important data point? Well, they held the Ohio State running backs at 2.3 yards per carry, and they held Julian Sand to 6.3. A couple drops in that game, will be noted. But we thought this defense was going to be good. Michael Toff, Jelani McDonald, they're good in the secondary. Linebackers, Anthony Hill and Leona Leafau have been awesome. And then I thought the defensive line was probably their biggest concern, just with the departures. But you could really see how that unit immediately stepped up with names like Colin Simmons, Ethan Burke. They've been awesome. I mean, I don't know why I doubted them to any degree. Those players rotated on the field a fair amount last year too. So they should come as no surprise. They've immediately stepped up. I think Texas is the side I'll lean to. 6.5 is the spread. I thought this would come down within the 7 it has. That was really the hesitation immediately. Now it's a question of where does it go? Does it meet resistance or do we continue getting Florida money? Our model makes this 8.2, so there is some value on Texas, and there's a good chance I'll end up on this side, just waiting to see where the line settles. On the total, it's 43.5. That's what the model made it initially. So it was kind of right at spot on the opening line. We don't really show a lot of value there, so we will pass on the total. I respect both defenses. I'll say this, maybe that would be something to look at depending on how Florida's injury report plays out. Vanderbilt, Alabama. I believe this is where game day is. Maybe you should have let off the show with this, but rematch of last year, of course, that crazy shootout game. Vanderbilt now has to go to Tuscaloosa. Bama is a 10.5-point favorite. 56.5 is the total. Straight and away, we bet Vanderbilt at open at plus 13. I still show some value on them in the spot, so hopefully we can lay out why. I mean, people probably will try to poke holes in this Vanderbilt schedule, but they've played 2 Power 4 teams in Virginia Tech and South Carolina. Teams that are supposed to be pretty good and have looked good at spots. They absolutely beat them down too, which I think is the biggest point to take home. Virginia Tech, they win 44-20. South Carolina, they win 31-7. Those are huge victories, and honestly, they could have been worse. They also just beat Georgia State and Utah State. Utah State was a little greasy, 55-35, but there was still an 8.7 to 6.2 yard per play advantage. So we really haven't seen Vanderbilt slip up yet. And no, they didn't cover in their most recent game. It was a 22.5-point spread, but the average margin of victory was 25. So a couple things go your way. Vanderbilt's covering in that game too. Alabama, since the loss to Florida State, which was a bad loss, one that they couldn't recover from, even if some of the weird stuff in that game went their way, like the field goal miss, turnover on downs, it still wouldn't have mattered. Since then, they beat UL Monroe and Wisconsin, which isn't saying much, so really starving for a good data point, and they come out and they beat Georgia 24-21. But you look at that game after the fact, and you come away with some questions. 20% post-game win expectancy. They missed another field goal in this game. Kicking is certainly a problem for this team. Reason you win the game, Georgia fumbles at their own 9-yard line, gives Bama 3 points, and they have a turnover on down at the Alabama 8-yard line going into score. From there, other factors, Alabama was 13 of 19 on third down. Georgia was only 2 of 8. So you win a game, you steal a game that arguably you shouldn't have won. It was very close throughout. All the yardage stuff favored Georgia, especially on the per-play basis. Just some errors cost them. Injuries in this game, there's not really many on Vanderbilt, and that makes sense. They haven't played the best schedule. Bama has a lot of injuries, especially on that defensive line. Quay Russaw got hurt. He had surgery. He's going to be out. Jamarian Lathan hasn't played since week 1. James Smith can't play in the first half off of targeting, and they also lost a depth piece, Jeremiah Beeman, earlier this year. So that defensive line could be tested early for Bama, which is a concern for me, considering Diego Pavia is very mobile. He absolutely dominated this game last year. He's already up to 6.1 yards per carry, only 2 sacks on the year. And as a passer, people like to doubt him, but 74.5% completion percentage, 9.8 yards per attempt, 11 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays, and this is not an anomaly. He's been doing this for years. Make fun of his age all you want, but he has a lot of experience. And the skill players are better this year than last year. Last year, just hero balling his way to victories. Cedric Alexander, the 4-star, is a little healthier now. He's at 5.3 yards per carry. Eli Stowers is back for another year. He leads the team in receiving at 301 yards. I was really skeptical of Trey Richardson. I mean, I think he's a D2 transfer. I forget. He's from Washburn. I can't remember what level of competition that is. Excuse me. But I wasn't really optimistic. He's having a good year. I don't really know what to make of it. And then the offensive line, this unit was in the bottom 100, and they've jumped. They're not the best pass blocking unit, but they have faced 2 good pass rushes with Virginia Tech and especially South Carolina. Alabama's really banged up on the defensive line. I mean, this could be an advantage for Vanderbilt. And really, when you look at the 123rd pass blocking, 63rd run blocking, what you see on the screen for O-line is an aggregate. It's basically Isaiah Glass, who's the huge problem. They actually have 4 above-average offensive linemen, and Glass is just like replace Glass. I don't know if you can find a replacement behind him, but I mean, he's the biggest concern by far. So can Alabama take advantage of this? You would think they could, but somehow this pass rush is 125th in efficiency, and just like, I don't get it. They have the injuries. That is what it is. But I mean, you have 5 stars. Like, where's Kean Keeley? What's Yanze Pierre doing? The answer is not much, and I'm not really sure why. I don't know if this is a D-line coach thing, but we're talking multiple 5-stars now that haven't quite been able to get there. They're still young, so I don't know. Xavier Brown's also been a mess in the secondary. They allowed 10.9 yards per attempt to Thomas Castellanos. They have improved. Like Gunnar Stockton, he didn't have a very good game. But then 6.9 yards per carry, I mean, that's something Vanderbilt can exploit. They run a funky offense. They're a very good rushing attack. That's a concern for me. I think Vanderbilt scores in this game. Conversely, Alabama on offense, they've righted the ship here. Ty Simpson's up to a 69% completion, 9 yards per attempt, 6 big-time throws, only 2 turnover-worthy plays. I honestly wish he'd rush more. I'm surprised he hasn't. But his pressure-to-sack ratio's not the best. Still, 25% pressure rate's okay. The drops have been a problem, man. Like 8.3% drop rate. His stats would look better without drops, and it continues to play Ryan Williams. I don't know what's going on with him. He dropped a bomb in their last game. Not that it mattered, but that was a huge, it was like a 70-yard touchdown or something. I can't remember, a long one, but he dropped it. So to the skill players, I mean, the pass catchers are still coming in 23rd in efficiency. That's largely a Jeremy Bernard stat. He's been awesome. Isaiah Horton and Latsier Brooks have been very good as complementary receivers. The run game is still inept. Jam Miller is not a difference maker at the running back position, so I'm not sure why people are super hyped about him. I mean, he's better than what they have, but we're not talking about like, I don't know, Shaheem White walking through that door or like some of the other efficient backs in the country. He's not Ashton Genty, let's put it that way. The O-line has been relatively good for this team. They're 14th in pass blocking, 76th in run blocking. They haven't really faced a good pass rush yet. Florida State is good at run defense, but not the best pass rushing team so far. So even that data point's a little bit weird. The expectations were higher for this unit with guys like Caden Proctor. I mean, they're rotating a little bit. They've tried to get their 5-star freshman Carroll in a bit. But honestly, it's not the best offensive line so far. I think Caden Proctor has a lot of upside, but we still need to see it against better teams. So I would argue they've been a little below expectation. It's just that expectation was very high, so they still come in as an above-average offensive line pretty clearly. As far as the Vanderbilt defense goes, they're currently 15th. They just haven't faced anybody. I mean, they've held all their quarterbacks at or below 7.2 yards per attempt. I'm not as high on Kyron Jones and Lenora Sellers as other people, so that's not super surprising to me. And their run defense, that is, has been pretty good too. But you look at opponent offenses, who ranks higher than 97? The answer is no one, and that's South Carolina. So putting a little bit of a grain of salt in this defense, but they've still been better than expected, and part of that's just health. Like Miles Capers and Corday Sidnor off the edge have been good. Safeties Randon Fontenette and CJ Hurd good in pass coverage too. Zayn Wood back on the defensive line. He was hurt all last year. So it's been solid for Vanderbilt. I just have, put it this way, Alabama is in a different stratosphere offensively than South Carolina and Virginia Tech. We still show value on Vanderbilt. A couple other reasons. This is going to be a slower game. Vanderbilt, they're 131st in pace. Alabama's 106th. Alabama will play faster, but Vanderbilt will not. Vanderbilt is very content playing around 30 seconds per play, slowing the game, creating a greasy environment. It's how they won last year. So that also does not work in your favor if you're betting an Alabama side and you need to win by 2+ scores. As far as the total goes, I could see an over in this game, but we're just not showing a lot of value on that. We're showing the most value on the Vanderbilt side, which I think you can play this through 10. We make it closer to an 8, which is where we will side. Vanderbilt plus a 10.5. Miami, Florida State. Lost a little shine after Florida State loses to Virginia, but still it's a 4.5-point spread with money pouring in on Florida State. Over-under is 55.5. We took an over in this game. Starting with pacing, Miami's going to play faster than 124th. They've been fortunate to be playing from ahead through most of their games. And Florida State, and that Gus Malzahn offense, is 35th in pace, playing much faster than we've seen Florida State play in recent years. Resume-wise, Miami's looked great. Beat Florida, already mentioned that game. It was basically their defense that actually took over the contest because the offense didn't play that well in that contest. USF, win by blowout. Bethune-Cookman's an FCS team. And they beat Notre Dame in the opener in a shootout, kind of, like a rainy shootout, if you will. Win by 3 points at a 51% post-game win expectancy. It's been an awesome showing for Miami throughout. Florida State, they have the Alabama win. We mentioned that a lot. A very sound contest. They don't play anyone in between. East Texas A&M, Kent State, a bye, till they get to Virginia. And this game, man, turnovers were a huge problem. Florida State fans have been blaming the referees. That is what it is. But when you look at it, Florida State fumbled on their own 33, touchdown Virginia. They threw an interception on the UVA 5-yard line going into score. It was that crazy tipped pass at the line of scrimmage, touchdown UVA. Florida State missed a field goal. Florida State had a 4th and 1 at the UVA 22. A lot of mistakes, and UVA had some too. They threw an interception at their own 20. That was a Florida State touchdown. They threw an interception at their own 36. That was a Florida State touchdown. It was into triple coverage. It was actually a good ball. The receiver just literally handed it to the defense. So, I mean, it was an ugly game. But at the end of the day, the more costly turnovers came with Florida State because that last UVA interception was at the end of regulation. Didn't matter. Injury-wise, Miami, Samson Okunlola is banged up on the offensive line. They had a bye, so maybe he's back. JoJo Trader still hasn't played. Roydell Williams is expected back for Florida State, who's a much healthier team after their cupcakes. For Miami, Carson Beck has been awesome. 73% completion, 8.7 yards per attempt, only 2 turnover-worthy plays. He doesn't run, which is not a big deal because the O-line is so good, 16% pressure rate. Beck has an awesome situation. We thought the skill position players, the key to their ceiling would be their freshmen, and it turns out, because they lost so many players. I mean, you lose like Restrepo and everyone of consequence in the receiving game. And freshmen needed to step up. Freshmen have. Malachi Toney leads the team, 268 yards. Transfers have been complimentary. CJ Daniels is not far behind. Mark Fletcher's at 5.9 yards per carry. It's a top 20 group of skill players. The O-line is awesome. They returned almost everyone last year, 1 replacement. Malagoa is the stud left tackle. They're top 10 in pass blocking and run blocking. And they've handled all their opponent defensive lines. And while you could poke holes in them, we're still talking Notre Dame, Florida, USF. It's a good level of competition. Even if Notre Dame's a little down, even if Florida's really hurt, it's better than East Texas A&M and Kent State. Can Florida State defend this? I don't know. I've been pleasantly surprised by the run defense. I think the Desir twins have been good for them. And in the secondary, Earl Little has been good, but I still think there's holes to be poked. And I think you've seen that with some of the box scores. 7.1 yards per attempt allowed to every quarterback, which is okay. It's just the situational success they've been giving up. Like Chandler Morris had a lot of it, and Chandler Morris got banged up in that game. And Virginia rushed for 4.4 yards per carry. The question is it correctable with Florida State? I kind of think the answer is yes. You look at like Jamari Taylor and some of the runs he had, you would see Florida State defenders just like meet him right in the hole. And the issue is fundamentals, like wrapping up. And you would see everyone on the coaching staff talking about this live in game. It's just like they didn't have to lose that game, and they could have played much better on defense. They are 10th in run defense. The biggest problem is their pass rush. They're 94th there. It should be a pretty clean pocket for Beck, and if that's the case, I still think they can move the ball on this Florida State defense, even if we do like some of what we've seen. On the other side, Castellanos, he came back down to life, saw the errors pop up for him again. We know he's very mobile. He doesn't take sacks. He's only taken 2 of them, but you just ride and die with him in the pass game. And it appears he really trusts Deuce Robinson, which makes sense. Deuce Robinson's this big 6'6" target. If you're going to throw the ball up in contested situations, if you're under pressure, he makes a lot of sense. But there's just not that much else that I trust. Danzy had the weird fumble, non-fumble. They haven't got a lot out of the other pass catchers behind Deuce Robinson so far. They are very talented. Boggs and McCoy could very easily play more. Those are 2 highly recruited young players. But you're just relying a lot on Robinson. And Castellanos, he's not the tallest QB. We already saw the tip balls at the line of scrimmage come in to bite him. It's just a concern with Castellanos. With that said, mentioned Robinson. The run game has gotten going too. Gavin Sawchuk up to 5.6 yards per carry. He had a great game other than the fumble. And then the offensive line's been pretty good too. I will say they have not faced an elite defensive line yet. Even Alabama, as good as they are, they were disappointing in that game and have been all year. Florida State is playing 4 transfers and Richie Leonard. They've all been solid. But this Miami pass rush is different. They currently rank 2nd in efficiency. A lot of that is noise with, I believe, Texas Tech's number 1. Some of that just opponent driven. So at the end of the year, I fully expect Miami to be number 1 in pass rush. They're number 5 in total defense. Right now, Ruben Bain, I think, he's pushing into top 5 NFL draft potential. And this Rudge group, this rushing group with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor is probably number one in the country. And that doesn't even include interior pressure with like Ahmad Moten, who's been awesome and very good in run defense too. This team is second in the country in overall rush defense efficiency. They face good QBs. They face CJ Carr. They face Byron Brown. Maybe you don't consider Lagway elite, but he's a 5-star number one overall recruit. It's just like, pick a random team. I don't know. Pick Boise State. Like Lagway's much better than Maddox Madsen. It just kind of is what it is. It's a good data point to have stymied him. So I think it's going to be tough for Florida State. I mean, I like this offensive line. I still have questions with all these transfers. And this is just a different Miami pass rush. Florida State is taking a lot of money. We lean Miami minus the 4.5. But I mean, I think this probably goes to 4. It's in no man's land as far as key numbers go. But I mean, I'm going to take every point I possibly can in this game. So I'll likely end up on Miami. I just don't really see a big incentive to take it right now with Florida State taking money. As far as the total goes, we did play an over in this game. 55.5 is the current number. We were lucky enough to hit a 53.5 at open, but I still think you can play this through that number. We currently make this, sorry, I lost the game on the back end. We currently make this 58.5. So there is a little bit, and that's another key number you pass up there. So think the over is fine. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, underrated SEC game. A&M is a 14-point favorite. The total is 56, A&M being the home team, of course. Mississippi State coming off that heartbreaking loss to Tennessee in overtime. They didn't deserve to win based on post-game win expectancy. It was 37%. But man, did Tennessee really try to give this game away. It was ugly. Both teams missed field goals. Mississippi State did throw a pick six and have a fumble six, so they really tried to give away a game as much as they possibly could. But so did Tennessee. They muffed a punt. That was an easy Mississippi State touchdown. They threw an interception at midfield. They threw another one at the Tennessee 31. So ugly, ugly game. But honestly, now that I think about it, just like giving up 2 scores, pick six and fumble six, man, Mississippi State had chances. Other than that, beat Northern Illinois, covered in that game, beat Arizona State, covered in that game, of course, beat Southern Miss, covered in that game. Very good run out for Mississippi State. And A&M, been a little greasier. They play UTSA and Utah State, allow over 20 points in both, which is a little concerning. Beat Notre Dame by 1 point. They have a 66% post game there. It was a noisy game. So that was, honestly, maybe it could have been worse because A&M had 13 penalties and there was a bunch of nonsense in the game. Last time out, last week, beat Auburn 16-10. This is a game they should have won by more. The average margin of victory was 21.5 points. A&M missed 2 long field goals. They threw an interception at the Auburn 21, basically at the red zone going into score. They had a ton of drives stopped. Not only did they go 3 of 14 on third down, but they had 13 penalties. The reason they won is Auburn was somehow worse. Auburn only averaged 3.8 yards per play. They committed 10 penalties themselves, and they were 0 of 15. 0 and 15 on third and fourth downs. So credit the A&M defense. They stood tall when they needed to in that game, which is something we're looking at here. This A&M defense, 36th overall. They've been very good to begin the year. Outside of CJ Carr's 9.2 yards per attempt and a couple long Robert Henry runs from UTSA, those are the only 2 cracks we've seen. Tareem York has been awesome at linebacker. Marcus Radcliffe at safety, Cassius Howell at edge, Albert Regis at defensive tackle. The big question was, can we replace all of those interior departures that went to the NFL? And so far, the answer has been emphatically yes. The front, Scooby Williams was hurt in their last game too. Bryce Anderson didn't play defensive back. I'm not really all that worried about those units. I think if you want to beat A&M right now, you have to try to throw the ball over the top, which I'm not sure Mississippi State is equipped to do, especially considering Brennan Thompson, their number 1 receiver, went down in the last game. No word on his status. The O-line has been up and down. They lost Blake Steen earlier in the year. Tackle Albert Reese went out of their last game. While we're on injuries, Will Whitson, he's been out for the year, and Isaac Smith at defensive back went down in their last game. He might be their best defender, so that's important. So can Mississippi State take advantage of that A&M defense that we respect and think the best path is throwing it over the top? Well, Blake Shapen's been okay to start the year. He has a 66% completion, 8.2 yards per attempt, only 2 turnover-worthy plays and somehow 3 interceptions, so he's run poorly there. But he himself doesn't run. He's taken 13 sacks. His pressure to sack ratio is up at 29%. That's very high. So if you can get after Shapen and speed him up with this offensive line, you can cause a lot of problems, which leads me to believe that A&M has defensive advantages over this Mississippi State offense. Conversely, hasn't always looked pretty for A&M on offense. Marcel Reed has not taken the step forward as a passer, and he very well could. He has a lot of great plays, and I think some of that is driven by his skill position players are just flat out upgraded. Mario Craver's done a lot after the catch. Casey Concepcion, same thing, and he's good in special teams. Both those guys are over 340 yards receiving, and Craver leads the country, I believe, at 477. At least he did coming into last week. So Reed, he has that to fall back on. He's at 8.8 yards per attempt, but the accuracy is still a problem. 60% completion percentage, 6 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. It's just been a little bit of a problem. We would have hoped a bigger step forward would have occurred for Reed. We know we can run the ball. The O-line has also not quite been as good as we thought, and for me and a lot of other people, the expectations were going to be a top 10 offensive line. They returned everybody. They've been top 40, which is good. And they did neutralize a solid Auburn pass rush with Kedrick Falk. They only allowed 7 pressures in that game, so maybe they've just been flat out better than we think, and it hasn't quite appeared in the sample because it's small. But overall, it was one of the most experienced SEC O-lines. I thought this unit was going to be awesome coming into the year. So that's a good place to fall back on. That helps Le'Veon Moss. That helps Marcel Reed not take any sacks. He's taken 4. Can they beat Mississippi State's defense, who is much better this year? Now, the expectation was kind of, all right, this unit is really improved, but how much? And the expectation was kind of in an average unit. You know, they were like 130th last year, so you go towards average. That's a huge jump. It's like 60 spots. They're 48th right now, which is even better. 49th in run defense, 107th in pass rush, 13th in coverage. But they have shown cracks. Joey Aguilar, 8.4 yards per attempt. They have allowed at least 4.4 yards per carry 3 times, Tennessee, Northern Illinois, and Arizona State. So I think you can run the ball on this defensive line, even with some of their strengths. But, I mean, their best players, I think, are in the back end. Isaac Smith at safety, plus he's banged up. We don't know if he plays. Kelly Jones at corner. Braden Jennings on the edge. Defensively, I think you can just go right up the middle if you have a good offensive line and run game, which is exactly what A&M is. We tentatively side that way with A&M minus the 14. I don't feel good about it just because Mississippi State has looked very good this year, and I think they're better than people think. But, man, the efficiency metrics, the home field, the stylistic advantages, they're mostly A&M's direction. We make this outside the 14. It's going to move that way by all looks. If you want to go on it, you have to go now. We'll debate it. I'm not sure I can get there, but it's close for us. It's very close. This is a tough team to evaluate. Tough game. Next up. Iowa State, Cincinnati. We go to the Big 12. 1.5-point spread in favor of Cincinnati. This opened with Iowa State as a road favorite. Since then, Cincinnati's taken money. The total is 54. We did play an over in this game. We played one early on, I believe. Took this at 51.5. So it's across the key number, but we're still showing a little value there. So we'll talk about it. We'll play it and hopefully parse through why this could be something you put on your card. But just so we know ahead of time, the model currently makes this pretty close to 58. So a lot of value. Anyway, pace is pretty good in the game. Cincinnati's 34th. Iowa State's 83rd. I'm worried about both defenses to a degree. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk resume. Iowa State plays the Week 0 game against Kansas State in Dublin. They only had a 21% post-game win expectancy, but win an extremely sloppy, rainy game. Since then, they beat South Dakota, which isn't saying much, but they beat Iowa, which is a good win. It was a greasy game, 16-13, but very, very deserving in that victory, 75%. Arkansas State was their next win, and last week they beat Arizona, 39-14. 5.9 yards per play to 5.0. It probably should have been closer than it was, but Arizona had 3 costly turnovers, including a turnover on down, and Iowa State only had 1. And Iowa State's only turnover, Arizona gave it right back. It was interception, Iowa State, boom, interception right back from Fafita. So it didn't even matter the 1 turnover that Iowa State had. They just immediately got the ball back. For Cincinnati, they lost to Nebraska in Week 1, 63% win expectancy. Should have beat Nebraska flat out. Then they play Bowling Green, Northwestern State, have a bye before going and beating Kansas 37-34. They got their win back, but their post game was 25%. Yards per play, they lost it 7.5 to 10.9. And a lot of that, Kansas had 2 80-yard touchdowns, First play of the game, boom, Emmanuel Henderson. It was like a 93-yard touchdown or something. Problem is, Kansas had the only turnover. It didn't result in Cincinnati points, actually. So just one possession, Kansas falters on. Cincinnati gets the win in a shootout. In this game, injuries, a couple of them of note. Jeremiah Cooper is out for the year for Iowa State in the defensive backfield, and Jontez Williams, he went down as well very late in the game. It was a nonsense part of the contest. I believe there was like 3 minutes left. They were killing Arizona. And Matt Campbell's been getting crucified a little bit for leaving this guy in there. We have no valid injury reports for Iowa State yet. The rumors on the message boards are not good. I'm not going to speculate, but I don't know if Jontez Williams plays in this game. We'll put it that way. Those are two of the better defensive backs. For Cincinnati, they're getting healthier. Dante Corleone is finally expected to make his return. They did lose Joe Royer in their last game. He just was making a catch over the middle, went airborne, got undercut, landed on his back, and hit his head. You'd presume it's a concussion. You don't want to speculate, but Royer probably a question in this game. Let's start with Iowa State's offense. Rocco Becht has been such a Superman for this team for so long. 66% completion, 9.2 yards per attempt, 8 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. He's not the most mobile guy, and he only has 38 rushing yards, but you feel his mobility in different ways, how he buys time in the pocket, scrambles, timely. He's a good quarterback. There's no way around it. And he hasn't been done a lot of favors. 9.2% drop rate for this team. The skill players just aren't. That's why he's so impressive, because everything around him is not that good. Pass catchers, they have actually jumped to 28th, and part of that was the Chase Soul breakout. Campbell was a little revealing after their last game about how Soul has battled injuries. I believe he got hurt like 4 practices into camp and didn't play the rest of the way. And finally erupts for 146 yards last week. And hopefully he can help Brahmer and Burkle out a little more, because they've got nothing out of Townsend, playing very low-level receivers. Soul was a big point that they needed. I was very critical of him. I did not know he had the injury. So maybe he can be that wide receiver one they need. Outside of the pass catchers, the ball carrier is pretty lackluster. 4.3 yards per carry for Hansen, 4.2 for Sama. But the O-line is still not good. They are better than we thought. This unit was 115th last year. They were in that range. They're 84th this year in pass blocking, 41st in run blocking. They've been better at every single position. They're still not good, but at this point, they're at least all above average. Last year, they were all below average. And you can look at the individual data points. 9 pressures allowed to Iowa. They're the 8th ranked pass rush in the country. 4 to Arizona. Well, they're ranked 59th, but still, that's good. And I think the unit is getting better play out of like Jim Boniface. He only has 1 pressure allowed at center. It's just a better unit. It's still not amazing, but it is better. That's helped the whole offense. Cincinnati has not been able to rush the passer. They are 120th. They are 4th in run defense, and they do get back their stud, Dante Corleone, which is going to help. But a lot of the reason they're so good at run defense is this linebacker room with Jake Golday, Jonathan Thompson, Jack Dingle. These are awesome players. Golday is getting hyped to be a potential second-round draft pick at this point. Corleone coming back is also huge. They're going to be clogging up the middle with him. He's one of the best D tackles in the country. So you probably have to throw the ball over the top of Cincinnati. They're 80th in coverage. That's the way you want to do it, which makes that Soul addition so important for this team. But this is going to be a duel. You're going to have Golday, Thompson, Dingle covering those tight ends, Brahmer, Burkle, Moore. If you love greasy matchups in college football, that is one to watch, how those tight ends do against these backers. I'm excited for it. On the other side, Brendan Sorsby, real gamer, had an awesome contest last week against Kansas. 67.5% completion, up to 9.6 yards per attempt, 7 big-time throws, only 2 turnover-worthy plays. He's very mobile, 6.5 yards per carry. He's like the Haynes King no one knows about. Only taken 1 sack this year, and the O-line has been okay at best. And we're critical of Iowa State skill players. It's not like Cincinnati's are that better. It's a bunch of G5 transfers across the board. FCS transfers like Jeff Caldwell. The run game is pretty good. Tawi Walker's a solid Wisconsin transfer. Of course, Sorsby's active in this area too. But Cyrus Allen, he's had to do a lot. I know he's a G5 to Texas A&M, back to, like this level of competition. He leads the team. Caleb Goody's a G5 transfer. He's not far behind. Somehow they've made it work. Royer's an excellent tight end. I hope he plays in this contest. He's from Ohio State. But the O-line, they lost almost all their starters. They've taken a step back predictably. 103rd in pass blocking, 42nd in run blocking. A lot of these transfers are lower level. But when you dive into the player personnel, it's actually pretty good. 4 of them have played well. It's just DeAndre Buford's been an absolute mess. They played Ethan Green over him at times, and I wish they would continue to do so because Buford's been tanking the offense. With that said, Sorsby being so mobile and crafty in the pocket, this has been mitigated a little bit by him being awesome. From there, I think you can score on Iowa State's defense. I really do. 76th in total defense. Up front, they're awful. 102nd in pass rush. 102nd in run defense. 122nd in pass rush. They have one good player. It's Dominique Orange. And teams have been able to dedicate extra resources to him of late. They just don't have anything around him. The linebacker room is very soft. All those injuries they had last year, like Bacon, Brazina, they've all been awful. They have 3 good players on defense. Marcus Neal, Jamison Patton, and John Tess Williams, who I think is hurt. And they've showed cracks. Avery Johnson got them for 9.1 yards per attempt. It's just, at some point, you're Iowa State, man. You don't have 5 stars behind these guys. You can't be losing John Tess Williams. You can't be losing Cooper. I think Cincinnati moves the ball. Ultimately, we sided with an over rather than a side, just with pacing being above average in this game, both offenses being good. I love both quarterbacks, and both defenses have questions to me. And it's honestly in the back end for both teams, which suits the quarterbacks and style of play for both offenses. So we will play an over. We played 52.5 or 51.5. I can't remember. I could just check. Yeah, 50. Oh, we played, 51.5. But the current number is fine. We still show value over there. Virginia, Louisville, becoming a sneaky game with Virginia's upset over Florida State. It's a 7-point spread in favor of the home Louisville. Got a crazy win of their own. 62.5 total. So Virginia, we've seen what they've done. They beat Coastal Carolina. They lose to NC State, and they only had a 6% post-game win expectancy. What a pure shootout in that game. Then they beat William & Mary and Stanford before beating Florida State in that crazy contest where we mentioned everything that went wrong for Florida State. It was basically turnovers across the board, but one of the turnovers for Virginia was a little less costly. So they get a win in overtime. Louisville, meanwhile, they have 2 good data points. They beat James Madison on that Friday night game, 28-14, and they beat Pitt 34-27 with a 48% post-game win expectancy. They lost yards per play, 4.7 to 6.2, but Pitt had 5 turnovers to Louisville's 1. Pitt also went 2 of 14 on 3rd and 4th down. Louisville went 9 of 19. So this was a very rough run out for Pitt in high leverage situations. Injury-wise, the biggest one for Virginia is Brady Wilson, their center. He's their best offensive lineman. He didn't play last week. They've gotten a lot of good play out of running backs, so Noah Vaughn's not as important. On Louisville, all 3 of the running backs are hurt to some degree. Kewan Brown didn't play last week. Duke Watson got hurt in the game and didn't return. And Isaac Brown came in with an injury, was lucky to finish it out. Stanquan Clark also out for the year at linebacker. We'll start with Virginia's offense and Chandler Morris. He did get banged up. Looks like he hit his hand on a player's helmet. So we'll see what I think he'll be Fogo, but you never know, just mentioning it. 71.5% completion percentage for him, 8.3 yards per attempt. The biggest problem is the turnover-worthy plays. He has 7 of them to 5 big-time throws. Just takes a few more risks than you would like. He's very mobile, 7.7 yards per carry, and he's only taken 2 sacks. So he is by far, since Bryce Perkins, he's been one of the best quarterbacks I can remember in a UVA jersey, at least to this point. Maybe Brennan Armstrong, I don't know. But he's elevated skill players that I don't think are particularly good. Terrell Harris is from Kent State. Cam Ross is from James Madison. They're just not the highest level transfers, but he's done a great job. Harris has 366 yards, and he has created on his own. He looks awesome after the catch. But the other thing is FCS running back Jamari Taylor, he walked on at the FCS level. He's up to 5.3 yards per carry. He had some awesome runs against Florida State where he was dead to rights, and he breaks these tackles. He runs hard. The offensive line, they've had pretty good results considering all of the injuries they came into the year with. They haven't faced a great defensive line. Like Florida State is the best one they've played. They're sort of imbalanced towards that run defense with the Desir twins. They're not the best pass rushing unit right now. The best pass rush in terms of efficiency was actually NC State at 40th. I will say they've done their job against these teams, even if they are imbalanced or you could poke holes. The only player I'm worried about currently is Jack Whitmer, one of their newcomers. The other thing that gives me pause is Brady Wilson at center. If he's down again, then maybe you could see some potential holes in this offensive line. And they need Brady Wilson. They need everyone at full strength. Louisville's defense has been awesome. Louisville's defense has not faced the best level of competition, but they're 7th in total defense. Eli Holstein got them for 8.1 yards per attempt, but you know the deal with Holstein. He has the turnovers, so it's more about the turnover-worthy plays than the overall efficiency for him. Other than that, Bowling Green was up to 6.6 yards per carry, but no one else they face has been above 3.5. The other hole you poke is they have not faced an offense ranked higher than 60. James Madison is 60th. They haven't faced a passing attack ranked higher than 103rd. That was Bowling Green. So the defense has been untested. The question is, have they lived up to expectations? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Cleve Lubin from Coastal Carolina, René Conga at defensive tackle, Wesley Bailey from Rutgers. They've been awesome on the defensive line. TJ Quinn, TJ Capers, awesome linebackers. Homegrown DBs, Antonio Watts, D'Angelo Hutchinson, all been solid. So it's definitely tough skiing for Virginia in this game. There's holes you could poke both ways, which leads us to a volatile outcome. Louisville is Miller Moss. He's been okay. 66% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt, 5 big-time throws, and turnover-worthy plays. We know he can't run. He has negative 40 yards. He's taken 8 sacks. Problem is the offensive line is just so bad, they're getting annihilated. And on that, yeah, they faced a couple good pass rushes. James Madison in Pittsburgh. We're not talking about Miami on the other side. Pete Niger's been the only difference maker at center. Some of the other players are downright liabilities like Rasheed Miller. It's a bottom 100 pass blocking unit, and only 93rd on the other side. So overall, this offense is outside the top 100. So the line is a huge problem. The pass catchers and run games have actually been good. With the run game, it's just the injuries. Isaac Brown is still at 8.1 yards per carry. That is basically a couple long runs. He has like 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards, 75 yards. And he's explosive, so you get those. But it's just a little dangerous living that way. Watson and the other Brown are injured right now. The receiving game is good. Chris Bell's going to get drafted. Lacey's been solid. Those are your top 2 receivers forming a solid tandem. The offense just comes and goes with the offensive line and how they pass protect. Can they do a good job against Virginia's defense? I think the answer is probably Virginia's defense has been suspect. They're 52nd overall. I think that's generous. 8.7 yards per attempt allowed to CJ Bailey. They allowed 8.2 to William and Mary. 9.9 to Ben Gulbranson. Yeah. Yards per carry. 6.2 to NC State. 5.5 to Florida State. The defense just has cracks, and you knew this coming in when you look at the players. Like in the secondary, Donovan Platt's playing from Army. Jason Prever's playing from Morgan State. Emmanuel Carnley from Miami has been very bad too. Up front, they're a little better with Mitch Melton. It makes sense. He's from Ohio State, but I mean, this is a suspect defense. We lean Louisville. The biggest concern I have really is that offensive line. I just don't think Virginia can really take advantage of this at this point. Louisville's offensive line is a fatal flaw, but teams like Virginia not super well equipped. And conversely, if you really like Louisville, you're hoping all of those statistics that they put on paper against the lower level teams, on defense especially with like Cleve Lubin and Wesley Bailey, you hope those are solid and that they translate to Virginia, who is a better offense than a lot of teams they've faced. That's what's giving me pause in this game and why we make this just a lean towards Louisville at -7. We're talking the middle of the pack in the ACC right now, and when you're laying a touchdown, a full score, it's hard to feel comfortable in some of these spots, especially considering I think Virginia is a very good team. If you want to know what the model thinks, we have it -9.7. Maybe you could look at an under. It's at 59 and a 9.2 for us. Just don't show a lot of value on either number to potentially look at here. Syracuse SMU. 16.5 point spread in favor of SMU. The total is 58.5. So Syracuse, so far, you beat UConn, Colgate, Clemson, awesome Clemson win. You lose to Tennessee. No shame there. It was a well-fought game. And you lose to Duke. The difference is you lose in Jelly against Clemson. You move to Ricky Collins. And then you get blown out 38-3. Well, what happened? Yards per play was 4.9 to 7.9. Of course, they lost. They allowed 6.9 yards per attempt to Darian Mensa's 6.6 yards on the ground. Okay, none of that has to do with Ricky Collins. We knew the Syracuse defense was suspect. I thought it was better than that, but still had questions. The problem on offense was turnovers. 2 of them were fumbles. They had 1 at the Duke 36, so going in to score. 1 at their own 30, automatic points for the other team. And they also had 2 turnover on downs inside the Duke 30. One of them was at the Duke 2-yard line. the box score is 38-3. The reasonable score is probably 38-20, maybe even a little lower, maybe like 31-20. Just bad run out for Syracuse. More on their efficiency in a little bit at the player level. But so far, SMU, they're coming off a bye, so important for them. They most recently have lost to TCU, beat Missouri State, lost to Baylor. So definitely up and down for this SMU team. But they've looked good. They had a 27% post game against TCU. Still a shootout that came down to the wire. Basically, their 2 interceptions were what caused the victory for their opponent, TCU. Injuries so far, mentioned Steve Angeli, Tyshawn Russell at receiver, Darren McDonald at linebacker. I included Deuce Chestnut as well. He's been playing limited snaps for the defensive backs, but clearly not 100%. Zaki Barker for SMU is about the only injury right now. They're getting a lot of guys back, like Kilgore, Hudson have all returned. So Ricky Collins, 62% completion, 6.4 yards per attempt. He already has 6 big-time throws and 6 turnover-worthy plays, definitely more of the gunslinger mentality. And honestly, he hasn't run a lot. He has 3 rushing yards. We thought that this was going to be something maybe they relied on more because he is very mobile. They haven't. He's played right away into the Angeli role. So we'll see. Drop rate is 9%, which isn't good, doesn't help his stats. But honestly, I don't think Collins was the major problem last week. It was a lot of fumbling and giving up short fields and weird stuff there, and not converting 4th downs. The pass catchers are good. Dale Gill's good. Jonte Cook is good, both over 300 yards. Valari's at 250 at tight end. A lot of weapons to work with. Ball carriers aren't the best. They're 105th in rushing efficiency. You've seen Willis is at 4.7 yards per carry. Maybe Collins can eventually figure out how to get himself involved there. Offensive line is okay. This unit hasn't been great, but they haven't been bad. They've only faced 1 good pass rush. That was Tennessee. I think UConn and Clemson are both kind of underachieving. Clemson's in the top 60, but man, that defensive line's been bad. Of everyone on their offensive line, the only problems really have been one of their tackles. But I mean, Collins, Ferguson, Weatherspoon, they've been all good. So I'm impressed with this Syracuse offensive line. Can SMU take advantage? All right, coming into the year, thought their safeties, Nokobia and Moses, were their best players. Thought their secondary was going to be elite. They returned most of their production back there. It's somehow been the opposite. We've seen huge regression from the safeties. Deuce Harmon's their best defensive back right now, and it's actually been up front where they've had a better go of things. They haven't allowed a rushing attack to have success yet. Now, with that said, they've not faced a good rushing attack. Like TCU is the best one they face at 81 overall in total efficiency, so take that with a grain of salt. But still, teams are throwing the ball over the top of them. And I mean, you face TCU. We know they want to throw. Hoover's at 9.5 yards per attempt. Chandler Morris for Virginia, he's at 8.8. Even Missouri State got them for 7.2. So it's just like teams have been able to pick their poison against SMU, I guess. That's probably not the way to phrase it. Choose their avenue of success, and they very much have. And most of them are choosing through the air right now, which is a surprise to us. Still don't think that run defense is quite as good as other people. Kevin Jennings. Can SMU move the ball? He's taken a step back, and it's largely the turnover-worthy plays. He has 9 of them so far. The other efficiency stats are good. 68.5% completion, 8.9 yards per attempt, still the 7 big-time throws. But it's for every bomb you see completed downfield, boom, there's an interception. There's a fumble. He's also not running like last year. 30 yards through 4 games. He's taking 9 sacks. I don't know. It's just not been the Kevin Jennings we saw last year. His wide receivers do have a 9.5% drop rate, so they're not helping him a ton. And I've been disappointed with this unit. Maybe Jordan Hudson's return is really going to help them because, I mean, Romello Brinson's at 365 yards. Freshman Jalen Cooper's at 243. There's just not a lot helping those guys. Ymir Knight's a low-level transfer from the G5. RJ Maryland has not gotten over the injury that ended his season last year. They just don't have a lot of help. And the run game's not doing a ton either. TJ Harden's 5.4 yards per carry. They wanted to run a committee, but Derek McFall just hasn't developed enough for this. Green is a freshman. It's just not the best run game for him either in infrastructure. The offensive line has been much better than we thought, and part of this is probably just removing Savion Byrd from the lineup, which made sense. He's been up and down through his career and sort of just completely nosedived. So they're first in pass blocking, 28th in run blocking. PJ Williams has been elite. The one thing you can say is they have not faced a good pass rush. The highest pass rush they face is TCU at 109th. Just a lot of holes to be poked in SMU. honestly, when you look at this team and facing Syracuse's defense, I don't really think it matters. Yeah, Syracuse has the best pass rush on paper that will have faced SMU, but they're 87th. They win through their coverage, and that unit's banged up with Deuce Chestnut. They played 7 DBs last week routinely, and they already had problems coming into that. Syracuse allows 8.8 yards per attempt to Aguilar from Tennessee, 9.6 to Darian Mensah. They've allowed over 6 yards per carry 3 times. Up front, they were already a mess with Tennessee, Clemson, and Duke reaching those marks. There is upside with this team. I mean, if Chestnut can stay healthy, their 4-star Demetrius Samuels led the defense in snaps. He's been awesome. Anthony Delorier has been awesome too at linebacker. The secondary is pretty good. They have so many front seven problems. And you look at like Kevin Jobity, he's been really struggling inside. George Rooks, he's been really struggling inside. I wonder if SMU just gets rid of their previous game plans. They're 59th in passer rates, above average. They're fast. Do they slow? Do they just run the ball here? Because that's how you've beaten Syracuse so far. We'll see on this. Now, with that said, like Mensah still got him through the air. Aguilar got him through the air. Not expecting wholesale changes from SMU. But, man, just this defense is let out to dry. Overall, I think the best play in the game would probably be an over 58.5. I still think that Syracuse's offense is better than people think because of Ricky Collins, and he actually didn't have the worst game ever. I thought it was going to be horrible coming into that. But we make the line even with Ricky Collins in there over 17. So you could potentially look at an SMU side. It's a lot of points for me with Jennings turnovers. And then pacing-wise, we have this up at 64.5. So you could look at an over 2. We're debating this. I don't know if I'm going to play it. On the fence with the over in this game. Texas Tech, Houston. Texas Tech hits the road. They are a 12-point favorite against Houston. The total is 51.5. We bet Texas Tech at 10.5. We like this through 14. Texas Tech has one good data point. It's against Utah. They absolutely slaughtered them. And they didn't have their starting quarterback, Baron Morton, for over half the game. They held Devin Dampier to 4.3 yards per pass. They generated 4 turnovers. It was an absolute dominating win with a backup quarterback for half the game. Houston beat Stephen F. Austin. They beat Rice. They beat Colorado. And they beat Oregon State. First thing I'll say here, can this Houston defense stop Baron Morton or whoever plays quarterback, Hammond, in the offense? I think the answer is emphatically no. Who has Houston played? Well, first of all, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Injuries, there's not a lot. Texas Tech's Mike Dingle didn't play in their last game. And Houston, all those O-line scares, they all played except David Ndukwe. Anyway, Houston's defense, they're 9th in total defense. Awesome across the board. I would just say, who are their opponents? They played an option team in Rice. They played Colorado, who willingly started their third-string quarterback, Ryan Staub. And then they played 117th ranked offense, Oregon State. I know this defense is building. They added good transfers. Khalil Laufau, Eddie Walls, they're from Washington State and FIU. But do we really think that defensive line is standing up with those players? Carlos Allen's another one who's very good. I trust him more than the transfers. Latrell McCutcheon's been awesome in the defensive end, the backfield. But I just don't think they have enough talent to stand up against Texas Tech, who has Baron Morton playing well when he's out there. He's not mobile, and maybe his biggest concern is his inability to protect himself and feel where pressure is coming from. The guy just gets killed every year. Took an absolutely unnecessary hit in the last time out that knocked him out. But 10.5 yards per attempt, 6 big-time throws, 2 turnover-worthy plays. When he's throwing, he's awesome. Skill position players, top 5 in the country so far. Cameron Dickey leads the committee with Jacoby Williams. Very good. Coy Eakins at 260 yards. Tight end Louisiana transfer. Terrence Carter's at 243. Caleb Douglas at 226. Very good skill position players. The O-line is above average. And yeah, who have they played? Well, they did a great job against Utah, who's 14th in pass rush. They only allowed 12 pressures and 39 dropbacks. Have 1 weak link at Will Jados. That was expected with him coming over from Miami, Ohio. But this is an awesome offensive line. I think they move the ball basically at will against Houston. Houston's going to try to play slow and run the ball, and that's probably not a good recipe here. Maybe they can grease it up enough where the value of the point makes sense, but Wegman, he's been good on the ground. He's taken 8 sacks. He's going to take more. The pressure rate's 42%. He has a 61% completion percentage, which is low. The skill players, they're okay. They're just not up to the Texas Tech level. Like, I like Dean Connors. He's been fine. He's efficient, but not spectacular. The receivers, Stephen Johnson, he's been okay, 235 yards. Tanner Koziel at tight end, 234. It's just a lot of G5 transfers. Like, Koziel comes from the MAC. Amari Thomas comes from UAB. The offensive line is not particularly good. They're 133rd in pass blocking, 37th in run blocking. Very imbalanced there. They have faced a couple decent pass rushes, but Texas Tech's a different animal. They've also been banged up here. Like Mackenzie Agnello couldn't make it through their last game. We'll see if he plays at full strength. It's a thin offensive line, too. When a guy goes down, they don't have a lot to replace them. Texas Tech is first in overall defense. They only have one legit data point, but they erased Utah. And Utah has 2 first-round offensive tackles. They got beat by Romello Height, David Bailey, Skylar Gill Howard, Lee Hunter, AJ Holmes. That defensive line dominated them. The linebacker room is awesome. Jacob Rodriguez and Ben Roberts. If you want to beat Texas Tech right now, my thought is you probably try to do it over the top. But first problem, how do you pass protect for long enough? Houston has a really bad pass protection unit. That's going to be tough. Second, Connor Wegman's skill set is not throwing the ball to begin with. He's an awful passer. I mean, this is just a recipe for disaster. I think alt lines in this game are in play. I'm surprised it's not over 14. Before I get ahead of myself, be careful. I'm not always right on these things. But, man, hard for me to see Texas Tech not covering the spread. We make this closer to 17. It's one of the biggest mismatches we've seen all year, compared market to model. Colorado TCU. This game has a 14-point spread in favor of TCU, a 58.5 total in the game. Colorado's been an utter disaster. They lose to BYU with a 70% post-game win expectancy. And that's kind of been the thing. Coaching's been a mess for this team. They lose the Georgia Tech game. Now, they shouldn't have won, but because of the Georgia Tech turnovers, they were in position to maybe win. Deion Sanders messes up the clock. Yeah, it's like this team they start a third-string quarterback willingly and get beat by Houston by 16. Like, I just don't understand what this team is doing. Anyway, TCU's been much better. They do lose to Arizona State. They blew a 17-point lead. It's just a weird game. Very, very weird across the board. Honestly, Arizona probably could have won by more. They missed 2 field goals. Had some gnarly turnovers. They fumbled at the TCU 28. Turnover and down at their own 39. Just pretty messy. Also had a turnover and down at the TCU 3 going into score. Otherwise, they beat SMU. They beat North Carolina. 2 pretty clean wins for TCU. As far as the injuries go, Colorado has a ton of them, especially on defense. Tawfiq Thomas, Sam Okunlola, Gavriel Lightfoot, Anquin Barnes in the first half. He's a targeting. Those are all defensive linemen who aren't playing. Simeon Price and DeKalen Taylor at running back aren't playing. Archie Johnson at defensive back. TCU with some injuries of their own. Avery Hellman, Elijah Jackson at defensive back have been hurt. Elijah McAllister allegedly got hurt late in practice last week and then re-aggravated it in the game. And then Kavorian Barnes at running back has missed 2 games. So what's Colorado doing? Okay, well, they bring back Caden Salter. Thank goodness. Ryan Staub was inept, but Salter is not fantastic. He has 3 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays, 67% completion. Fortunately, he runs a little bit, so that gives you an avenue of success on the ground. The skill position players are just not living up to expectation. I don't know if this is a Shermer thing, if you go from, like Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter to these players and you're confused or what's going on, or is just too much change. The backfield's been very hurt. Simeon Price has been solid when he's out there. Welch hasn't been bad. They still don't run the ball that much, though. And their leading receivers are Joseph Williams from Tulsa and Sincere Brown from the FCS. Very, very cute. I'm impressed. I'm glad you can get that out of your low-level transfers. You have 7 4-stars at receiver. Where are they? What are they doing? You could argue, okay, maybe Joseph Williams and Sincere Brown are better than these guys. Why haven't you developed your receivers? Someone else developed those guys and they transferred in. They're low level. Your inability to develop talent is going to cost you games. You can't be starting Ryan Staub. You can't be starting FCS transfers when you have 7 4-stars at receiver. You can't do it. You're not maximizing your roster. You're playing down to competition, and it's what we've seen in the box score. Just no excuse. And they're squandering a good offensive line as well. This is the best offensive line Colorado's had since Deion's been here. They're 4th in pass blocking, 73rd in run blocking, and they haven't even had Phillip Houston. They've also faced some decent defenses. TCU's a good run defense. BYU's a decent defensive line. They're good in pass rush. BYU only got off 4 pressures in that game. 5-star Jordan Seaton has been awesome in his second year. There hasn't been a weak link on the offensive line. These are self-inflicted wounds. Can they score on TCU's defense? Probably not. I mean, well, first of all, the pass rush should be neutralized, but TCU is a good run defense, and they're good in coverage. Arguably, the 2 best players in the defense are Jamel Johnson and Bud Clark at safety. They're also getting better up front. Devin Deal, Caleb Elarms-Orr, the 4 stars this TCU team is recruited, the best recruiting team in the Big 12, who've started to play better and develop, something Colorado doesn't know a lot about. And their transfers plug the gaps. Like Caleb Elarms-Orr is the Cal transfer. He's been awesome. So I like the TCU defense. There's still questions with it, absolutely. So maybe Colorado can do enough to score some points, but I mean, that's a question for sure. On the TCU side, don't really see any resistance for them against Colorado's very injured defense. Hoover's been awesome, 9.2 yards per attempt. The only thing you worry about is turnover-worthy plays. He has 8 of them compared to 10 big-time throws, and he's not mobile. He does take a fair amount of sacks. But the skill group is much better. They've been hurt. Hopefully they get back Kavori and Barnes because the committee of Battle and Payne and Palmer is decent but not great. Eric McAllister, I hope, has the full week to get right because he is a difference maker. I like Dwyer. He's a good wide receiver too. Manjack is good in his role, but if we need Ed Small or Dozie Ezukama to play more, it's probably a problem. TCU's O-line has been up and down. They played decent. They only allowed 6 pressures to Arizona State, which is pretty good. The main problem's been Ryan Hughes. I'm still a little skeptical of Ben Taylor Whitfield, but he's been better. He's not been good, but he's been better. They've been mixing 2 players overall, or 2 positions. Quentin Harris has played a little bit for Ryan Hughes. They both have sucked, so it hasn't mattered. And then they've been rotating their guards, Remington Strickland, Carson Bruno, Cade Bennett. It hasn't made much sense to me, but that's what they're doing. Defensively, Colorado is 93rd. They've allowed a lot of production, 8.7 yards per attempt to Nick Miniucci of Delaware, 9.3 yards per attempt to Connor Wegman of Houston, 6.4 yards per carry to BYU, 6.8 to Georgia Tech. They've gotten annihilated by mobile signal callers. Bear Bachmeyer and Haynes King both dominated on the ground. Josh Hoover is not that, but he is a dynamic passer through the air. So we'll see how this matches up. But Colorado's defense has a lot of problems. I think TCU scores at will. Can Colorado do their part? That's the question. We lean over in this game. And a lot of that just having to do with the TCU side. Can Colorado get up to their 22 implied team total? I don't know about this. We make the line 15.5. So it's taking money TCU's direction. It's about efficient for us. Total, we have at 62. Not enough value for me. Something to consider, though. Last up, Kansas, UCF, a 4.5-point spread in favor of the Jayhawks, 55 total. Kind of weird games across the board. We mentioned Kansas last time out against Cincinnati. They lose by 3 with a 75% post-game win expectancy and averaging 10.9 yards per attempt. They have the 280-plus yard scores. It's just a crazy shootout. Before that, they lost to Missouri, another decent shootout, but, like Missouri had a fumble 6. They sort of put that game at least in contention, but ultimately they get the win. Kansas loses. UCF, weird schedule, beat Jacksonville State by 7. That was the Cam Fancher start. Completely inept offense. Beat NC-A&T by beat North Carolina 34-9. North Carolina's in disarray, and then they lose to Kansas State 20-34. But they win yards per play, 6.8 to 6.4. Basically, Kansas State escaped their only turnover without any points surrendered, and UCF had their backup quarterback in the game for a large portion. He threw an interception at his own 25, immediate Kansas State score. UCF also fumbled on the Kansas State 21 going into score. They had a turnover on downs at their own 36, which led to a field goal. It was all self-inflicted wounds. For injuries, we mentioned it. Taven Jackson, AC joint sprain. They bring in Ja'Cory Brown. Funny, you start Cam Fancher, who ends up being your 3rd stringer in week 1. Now he's not even your 2nd string backup. He's your 3rd stringer. Anyway, Taven Jackson goes down with an AC sprain. He comes out in a sling. Ja'Cory Brown goes down. He's in a sling with an AC joint sprain. Taven comes back into the game, still loses, which is wild stuff. They're both hurt. Dylan Wade didn't play at tight end. Isaiah Nixon didn't play on the edge. For Kansas, very injured at linebacker. Dylan Brooks is hurt. He hasn't played yet. Bengali Kamara can't stop getting targetings. He's out for the first half. Saeed Gibbs and Mason Ellis are both hurt at defensive back. Deshaun Hanika left last game at tight end. And Daniel Highshaw didn't play at running back. So Jalen Daniels, very explosive this year. 66% completion, 9.9 yards per attempt. We know what he does on the ground. His mobility has been a strength of his game for years, still is. Only 4 turnover-worthy plays. So that's awesome. Biggest concerns, 9.5% drop rate. Pressure rate's a little high at 34.5%. But skill players have been very good. Whether it's LaShawn Williams or Daniel Highshaw, they can't seem to keep both healthy at the same time, but one of them's always healthy. They've been awesome. As far as receiver, Emmanuel Henderson's up to 435 yards. He's been elite. You're basically getting the role-playing guys, Bowden Grown, Cam Pickett, Levi Wentz, to do exactly what you expect, and it's helped the offense. The O-line has faced 3 bad defensive lines, and then Missouri. Missouri did get off 15 pressures against this team, which is hard to excuse. But still, Cincinnati was an okay defensive line, without Corleone, albeit. They only had 8 pressures. So the O-line's been pretty good for Kansas. Thought that would be the case. They only had 2 starters back. But the only issue really is Calvin Clements at tackle. Inside, Baines and Foster have been good. Can UCF's defense take advantage of this? I think the answer is maybe. They've been playing bad offenses. They just allowed 6.4 yards per carry to Kansas State, largely Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson. But they have not allowed an opposing passer over 6.5 yards per attempt. I would argue this is the best offense UCF will have faced this year. But coming into the year, we thought they were going to be a lot better than people thought, especially on the edge. Nigel Lee Kelly and Malachi Lawrence were returning players. They didn't have a lot of them with Scott Frost coming in. And interior players, John Walker and Horace Lockett, have been up for the challenge. The secondary is my biggest concern. I guess I should say back 7 because honestly, like Kelly Lawson is a disaster and they should just bench him. Linebacker is a deep position for them. They just haven't done it. But I think you can throw the ball over UCF. Kansas is a little bit of a better running team, but still, Emmanuel Henderson, Jalen Daniels, they can absolutely oblige throwing the ball over the top. With UCF, Taven Jackson's been good. 5 Big Ten throws, 5 turnover-worthy plays. He runs a little bit, takes too many sacks. His pressure-to-sack ratio is high at 27%. They need him out there. If they go to Cam Fancher, this team is dead. They might get shut out. I don't know. This is a huge drop-off from Taven Jackson to Fancher, so you need to watch this through the week. The skill player is not great. Just give the ball to Jaden Nixon more. He's averaging 14.1 yards per carry, but they keep slamming Miles Montgomery into the O-line. I know that'll likely converge, and you'll see them with a similar yards per carry over time. Nixon's on a small sample. Sorry, excuse the motorcycles out here. People are not very respectful at this time of day in Milwaukee. It's what it is. I apologize. But the run game is very important because the pass catchers are poor. Dwayne Thomas, 203 yards. DJ Black, 187. That's partially a product of the pass game and the quarterback, but you just need more out of your receivers, and they're not getting it. Marcus Burke has not done a lot for this team either. O-line has been a little better than we thought. Jacksonville State's a decent G5 defensive line, but they did a decent job against some of the opponents they faced so far. I will say, like, Kansas is the best D-line they faced. They ranked 20th in pass rush. And Preston Cushman has been a mess at tackle for UCF, and they're rotating both guards. So there is some concern with his unit. 60th in pass blocking, 82nd in run blocking. I think this unit probably gets exposed a little bit by Kansas's defensive line. Just you can't rotate that many guys, and one of them is not Cushman, who's awful. The data points for you having faced bad pass rushes, it's not all that ideal for UCF. The Kansas defense got kind of annihilated in their last game. 9 yards per attempt to Brennan Sorsby. Prior to that, 8.6 to Bo Pribula. They've allowed 5.6 yards per carry to Missouri, 5.8 to Cincinnati, 4.4 to West Virginia. The linebacker room is very injured, can't stop targeting. It's kind of just a mess for Kansas. We do think UCF can have some success moving the ball as long as Taven Jackson plays. So we're currently leaning under. I don't know where this goes. Both teams are slow. Kansas is 115th in pace. UCF is 109th. If Taven Jackson doesn't play, auto under for me. I'm just not sure I'll be able to stay on top of this line if that news comes or it doesn't. Like, it was just really weird. You're in a sling, then you're back in the game. Who knows? Otherwise, I think you could maybe take a look at Kansas minus 4.5. We don't show a lot of value on this. We actually make this minus 1.6, but we have Taven Jackson at full go. Bounce house is a very tough place to play. I know if I remove him, we'll be pretty close to the 4.5, but optically, I would rather play Kansas than UCF in this game. So we'll see. This is one that requires monitoring. Not sure if it'll end up on the card because it does require monitoring, but we'll see. Of course, we get to the end of the video, and the police come roaring through too. Thought we could do it, just couldn't quite get there. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a comment. Requests, if you have them for the G5 video, please send them my way. Otherwise, I appreciate you very much. Thank you for spending your time with me. It means a lot. Until next time, good luck. We'll see you guys later.